Hey guys, it's Kyle at Harney Lane. We're back again. Today's a little bit different. We've brought in one amazing cheesemonger that we've known for many, many years. This is Cindy DellaMonica from Cheese Central here in Lodi. How you doing?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have been doing this. I've been doing cheese pairings for, 10 years?
10 years, going on 10 years,
Yeah.
which has been fabulous. I've enjoyed it so much. We've gotten to explore all different kinds of cheese pairings and wine pairings with you, and then gotten to some of your favorites. I didn't bring any blues today, Kyle. Sorry.
Those are my favorites.
Those are your favorites.
Well, that's fun. Well, you know, we normally do this with a whole bunch of people in the winery, and we have a great time looking at cheeses and pairing. And cheese, like wine, sometimes is perplexing. You don't quite know what you're getting,
Right.
where it comes, you know, it starts from something but turns into something else very
Right.
amazing. And so today we're going to be talking about wines and how they're produced, and also really kind of dig into cheese and figure out what's going on there, and help all of our folks really kind of decipher what they're seeing as they go out and start shopping for these various cheeses, right?
The fun part about cheese is that it happens very much like wine does. It has a terroir. Wine's terroir has effect on how your grape finishes, how your wine turns out. Same thing happens with the cheese.
Yeah.
You know, the variety of the animal or what they're eating, all of those things will affect what the milk tastes like. And so the craft of the winemaker is the same as the craft of the cheesemaker.
It's very much like the grapes that we source for the various wines that we produce, and the flavor profiles that come from all of those.
Right.
It's really cool, huh? Well, today we're going to be looking at two of our wines, our beautiful Dry Rosé,
Yum.
which is always wonderful this time of year. It's fun because it actually happens to be International Rosé Day, and
I
so
think
we're
that's
going to
great.
celebrate that. Yeah, and we're also going to bring out one of my favorites, a wine that I have learned to love and started as a grower, because we have to grow it so differently than a lot of other varieties, and that's Tempranillo. Tempranillo is a wonderful Spanish varietal that we're growing here in California. You know, there's less than 1,000 acres of Tempranillo in all of California, which is
Really?
pretty crazy.
Is it grown in any other state?
I'm sure it is, probably very minorly. In fact, I know it is for a fact. Texas is a big producer of Tempranillos. What's fun about it, though, and to kind of put it in perspective, 1,000 acres, which seems like a lot, but just in the Lodi appellation, we have over 100,000 acres of wine grapes. And that's just in our appellation, let alone all the others throughout California. So it's a really fun variety to explore and experience if you haven't done so. So, we're here today to talk about cheese. And I love cheese because you look at it and you always wonder, how is it even made? And maybe you can kind of take us through that process of where we go from, I guess, assume a milk of some kind.
Right.
And turn it into these amazing flavors that we get.
Absolutely. So basically, we take care of cheeses that are cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, or a blend, or a coupage, what they call coupage, a blend of cheeses. One of the cheeses we have in our shop is called fromage, because they have 4 milks in it. They've added water buffalo to the mixture of cow, goat, sheep. So we have 4 milks in that one.
Good figure.
Each one of those milks brings a different flavor profile to what you've got in the finished cheese. Around the world, though, other places, and I always love this in one of my classes, we teach at Cheese 101, and when I tell them that you can get camel's milk cheese, moose milk cheese, go to Russia or Sweden, you can actually watch moose being milked on YouTube. Dial it up. We had a fella in class do that with us one day, and here's a little babushka with a great big moose up here milking the moose. Interestingly enough, when you're milking a cow, you're on a stool and you're sitting, you know. So here she's up here milking a moose. My understanding is milk moose cheese is $500 a pound, and no, I've not had any. How about
I
that?
guess as long as there's fat in the milk,
Yep.
you can make it from anything.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Lots of animals around the world give you something different. So, as I said earlier, terroir is something that affects the milk for cheese making. This type of animal what breed in that type of animal. A Holstein cow makes different kind of milk than a Jersey cow does, which affects what the color of your milk is. Of course, everyone knows, get the answer right, Kyle, what color is all cheese?
Cheese color?
No. White.
White.
Because milk is white. If someone hands you an orange glass of milk, are you going to drink it? I hope not.
Not sure.
The orange that shows up in cheeses is there because of a product called annatto. And annatto is a boiled seed from the achiote plant. It looks kind of like pomegranates. They boil those fleshy seeds, and that turns into a natural food color, or a natural dye. 1200s, 12th century, somebody figured out we could add it to cheese and change our cheese from white to orange. However, the indigenous people use it for face paint, body paint, clothing dye, and so forth. It doesn't have an aroma, has no flavor. So all cheese is white or a variation of white to ivory, but any orange cheese is there because you've added annatto. It's an additive.
So that's some of what we're seeing here then. So
Yes.
so the different color variations that we have here are really due to the source of the milk, but then you get to probably what is would that be a cheddar?
Well, for example, if you want to look real closely here, I don't know if we can see that on the camera, here we have a white cheese.
Yeah.
We know that this is a goat's milk cheese because of its color. This one, however, is a coupage or a blend. When you look at this cheese, there's that lovely cheese right there, that's fairly yellow. That one is an ivory cow's milk. With that said, here's one that annatto has been added to. That Gouda's got a little bit of orange. So those colors are a visual clue before you even put the cheese in your mouth of what you might be tasting.
So annatto, am I pronouncing that correct?
Annatto, correct.
So if I went to the grocery store and I just bought any package of cheese, say a cheddar, would they always, the color that's in there, would that always be annatto, or would they be using other things?
Well, back in the day, gosh, you probably remember when the FDA started banning red number 4 or whatever, food color, because those were carcinogenic, or there was a problem with those. That's what they used to use.
I see.
But now they use the natural annatto, even in a grocery store cheese. The grocery store cheeses are there, they're mass produced, they're made in huge factories without human intervention. Hilmar here in California is the second largest producer of cheese in the whole nation. The state of Wisconsin is number 1. The city of Hilmar is number 2. How about that for interesting? So with that said, you have no place to age millions of pounds of cheese that are produced daily at Hilmar. Instead, they have to manipulate the recipe, the moisture content, and so forth. So you're going to go buy cheddar for your tacos tonight. You have your choice at the grocery store of mild, medium, or sharp. Well, sharp comes about after 12 months of aging. They don't have any place to age that in these mass productions. So they manipulate the recipe, change the cheese making process, add flavor, add color, squeeze out moisture as quick as they can, so on and so on, to come up with something that is sort of like a super aged cheddar.
Gotcha.
You're not getting the natural process. So these cheeses are not factory produced for the most part. They're made with time-honored cheese making tradition. Typically, you'd take a big vat of milk. In an artisan method, it'd be about 500 gallons. You warm it up, ripen the flavors. I always talk about that as if you had a mug of milk to put in microwaves to make hot chocolate in the wintertime.
Okay.
When you warm up that milk and you take it out, you can smell the dairy.
Sure.
You can smell the milk. That's what they're doing to this vat, bringing it up to flavor ripeness. Once they do that, they add the enzymes. We call it the cocktail of bacteria. If you were making a Havarti, you'd have, 5 different kinds of enzymes that go into it. But if you're making a blue cheese, you might have 6 different kinds of enzymes, plus one that goes in nothing but blue cheese, called Penicillium roqueforti.
Of course.
You want a blue vein or a mold in your blue cheese. Roquefort was the very first blue cheese of the world.
One of my favorites.
Exactly. And that's a sheep's milk cheese, not cow.
All right. Sheep's milk.
Sheep's milk. Yep.
So that leads me into my next question, because we sort of have been kind of alluding to different families of cheeses, and I think that really probably originates mostly does it originate to the source of the milk, or is it more in the style of
the craft of the cheesemaker?
Craft of the cheese. So how does, when you talk about kind of the families of cheeses, how does that, as a novice cheesemonger, how does that work?
A cheese buyer or cheesemonger?
Well, I guess I'm just a buyer because I really don't know enough about cheese.
So my cheesemongers, the mongers who work for me, we work together very closely to make certain that we know what style of cheese we have here and what family it belongs to. There are 13 families that every cheese in the whole world fits into at least one. Interestingly enough, we have, say, let's go back to our lovely blue cheese. There's a wonderful one from Germany called Grand Noir. Triple creme cheese with the blue veins through it.
So when you say triple creme,
what
does that mean?
That particular recipe meant they've taken a whole gallon of milk or the whole vat of whole milk, and they've added double the amount of cream over what we've got in here. There is a legal limit for creme family. A single creme, a regular brie that you would typically have from the grocery store, is single creme. Maximum amount of butter fat in that is 65%, or minimum amount to make it a single creme.
Yeah.
And we know what that tastes like. It has kind of a spongy texture. You can wrap it in pastry and bake it.
Sounds heavenly.
Awesome. Double creme, you take that same recipe, sort of, and you add an extra layer or an extra volume of cream only.
Okay.
When you finish your cheese and all the whey has come out and you're sending that cheese off to the consumer, it has to be 45% for single creme, 65% for double creme. Triple creme, 75% butterfat at finished weight. So each level, they've added more butterfat to it in order to bring it up to that
So you
level.
said whey, right? So is that the curds and the whey?
Curds and whey,
Is that
yes.
how that's all, is that kind of the initial?
Once we've inoculated the vat with the enzymes or the bacteria that will allow our cheese to form, we add a coagulant, so rennet. Rennet is the coagulant. In the old days, original, it's the stomach lining enzymes of the baby animal.
Okay.
Cow, goat, or sheep, little baby. Yeah. So when you're processing your veal for your table, you're going to use all the parts of the animal. They would harvest the enzymes from the stomach lining and thicken their vat of milk or coagulate it with that rennet. Now we're able to do it also vegetarian, no animal product. You do it with stevia or thistle leaves. They have an enzyme in the leaf that's very similar and will do the same thing.
Stevia. Isn't stevia sweet?
Well, stevia processed to be sweet is something else.
Oh.
But the enzyme in the thistle leaf will do the same thing and coagulate.
Oh, really?
What they're doing, the coagulation takes all of the solids, the butterfats and solids of milk, and hooks them all together. And the little bit of greeny yellow water that's left is the whey.
The whey.
The whey is filled with vitamins, minerals, proteins, all the things that you want to have, just no butterfats.
So what happened to that portion of it then?
Interestingly enough, back in the old days, the farmer or the cheesemaker would have taken the whey that was left over and gone right back out onto the farm. They slopped the pigs, they put it into the pig troughs. And you'd watch the farmer or the cheesemaker go along, and the kitty cats would be following, and the ducks and the chickens would be following, because all of them knew this is awesome. Got to have some of these treats. Today, now Hilmar makes millions of pounds of cheese a day. Yeah. Bear in mind, it takes 3.5 gallons of milk to make 1 pound of cheese.
Really? Wow.
And they're making several million pounds of cheese a day. Where does all that whey go? The whey actually is a byproduct that we now use in a far different way than typical, no pun intended. If you went to the gym and you got your power drink afterwards, the protein powder went into it. It's dehydrated cheese whey.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
You could go off to Sherry Sunshine and go get the canisters to add to your smoothie in the morning.
Okay.
Jamba Juice, you name it, they got it, right? Every package you purchase at the grocery store, Rice-A-Roni, bread, Cheerios, doesn't matter. Flip it around, look at the ingredient list. Nearly every one of them has milk proteins, whey powder, yada, added. Because in processing, nutrients are stripped from the food. When it's made into its product, they have to add the nutrients back. And typically it comes from whey powder.
Very interesting. So nothing is lost in the
lost,
process.
right.
Amazing. Very much like winemaking.
Correct.
You know, what comes into the winery is used primarily, in the wine we produce. but all the byproducts actually go back out to the vineyard
Absolutely.
to feed and replenish those vines.
Right.
Very, very similar.
Isn't that awesome?
It's I love nature and how it works and how we've been able to utilize it in all of these capacities. So, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Because most of us don't have the knowledge that you have. We're just average consumers. We don't always have the beautiful cheese shop in our town like we have with what you guys do, what you guys have. But we want to go out, we want to kind of expand our horizons on cheese. So we go to a grocery store and we want to get beyond what the average is. How do we do that? What should we be looking for? How can we expand our horizons in that area?
The majority of traditional grocery stores are not carrying specialty cheeses that are handmade, typical.
Okay.
They may have a few higher end cheeses. Maybe if you're looking for a blue, they might find an Amish blue or a Dana blue. And those are going to be ones that are going to be factory made, not typically sold in a lower end grocery store, a Quick Stop or something. You know, they're going to be a little bit higher. If you go to a higher end specialty store, for example, Whole Foods, Nugget, those styles of stores, they usually will have a cheese counter with higher end cheeses in them. If there is someone in attendance, and that's a big if, because that doesn't always happen, and or whoever's in attendance may not know what they have to sell. But ask the questions, and what you should do is be able to look at the cut pieces, be able to see whole wheels available to cut for you, not just prepackaged things that are made by the manufacturer and shoved into a case. Ask for a taste if you can get a taste. Ask for information. Find out, tell them what you're looking for. I'm not familiar with goat cheese and I'd like to try a goat cheese. What do you have here that is a goat cheese? Why is this one soft and that one's not? Ask some questions. Basic education. Yeah. But with that said, you're going to take home a piece and you're not going to know quite what to do with it, maybe. You might cook with it, you might have it with your wine. Maybe it's just something that you're putting out on a cheese tray to have with friends. And your friends might know a little bit more about them too. So, that's everybody's education.
I didn't even think about it.
Ask the questions.
It's kind of funny. I was in a coffee house this morning. Very small house. They specialize in they do all their own beans and everything. And it's like you have Guatemalan, you've got all these different coffees, and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what I want. And the guy coming behind me, and he's like, well, what do you have? He's like, oh, can I have a little taste of the Guatemalan? It's like, why didn't I do that? Yeah. Of course, I mean, ask.
We're not used to that.
Right.
We're
ask
not used
to
it.
See if you can taste and kind of great thought. I don't know.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's like coming to your tasting room and having a sample of your wonderful wines. Do I like the Albreño better than the Dry Rosé? I don't know, twist my arm.
I know.
I'll take one of each, please.
I do ask my butcher that, because there'll be a nice filet or a ribeye there. And it's like, can you take just a little piece of that, throw it on the grill so I can sample it before I buy it?
The answer's no.
Answer's no. Never worked. Yeah. Well, I think we should move on and maybe start looking at some of these wines and cheeses and see how these guys interact. Because one thing that we have found over the years is there are foods and cheeses especially that complement wines.
Right.
And not every cheese pairs perfectly with every wine.
Correct.
But it's one of those things where experimentation and tasting, and we have the hard job of having to come in and sit down with you every year and bring all of our wines in and work through a bunch of different cheeses to decide what we're doing. But it's a real eye-opener to see the exchange because foods or cheeses can absolutely change the flavor profiles of wines and vice versa. And that's something that we've learned over the years. And the interactions, when they're there, can be just
phenomenal,
amazing,
or not so much.
But I think we found some amazing ones today.
But interestingly enough, then you change it up on me. Even though I know that lovely cheese goes with your Tempranillo, you bring another vintage. And something's changed in the year, in how much water you gave them, who was mixing the mashup. I don't know what it is ever you did. Yeah. You changed the wine, now we have to find a different cheese to go with it.
It's the secret sauce like that cheese production, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some wines.
Okay.
Today we brought our Dry Rosé. This is our 2019.
Cheers. This is our 10th.
It's amazing.
I know. Awesome.
We usually have a whole host of people in front of us, and
know.
we do. It's
We
just
do.
a different venue, right?
I'm hoping that it's millions that are going to watch us next.
You're going to have to carry a Sharpie with you for autographs. let me
Oh,
tell
there
you.
we go.
What I love about rosés, they're so much fun. They're very consumer friendly. Pink is hip again, right?
Yeah.
We went through this whole era years ago. Rosés used to be very,
I'm old enough to remember that.
very well respected, fun stuff. And we went through what we would consider the white Zinfandel area, which we still had pink wines.
Right.
They were a little sweeter. We had some things going on with it, which actually were wonderful. They brought a lot of consumers into the wine arena as a
Right.
beverage, and from white Zinfandel graduated out. But in the process, it took these wonderful dry rosés and kind of threw them by the wayside and kind of changed people's perception of what pink was in the wine field. And so it's been really fun to then turn this all back around over the years. And as white Zinfandel has kind of fallen by the wayside,
At least the sweeter ones, huh?
yeah. And we've been able to bring rosés back and allow people to experience what's going on with those.
Sure. So, question for you. This color is lovely, but it's fairly light as pinks go. There's a variety of levels of pinkness, if you will.
There are. One thing that's fun about rosés, dry rosés, or rosés in general, is that it's kind of an open slate to create whatever you want. It's really a winemaker's style.
Okay.
Kind of like cheese making. You know, you may be using goat cheese or goat milk or cow milk, but then the style kind of gets wrapped around it, or the cheesemaker style. Well, same with winemaking.
Gotcha.
And so this is a very light style. We love the bright acidity, the vibrancy. Nothing heavy about this wine at all. It
really
just,
good.
just speaks spring and summer.
Yeah.
And just goes with so many different foods. This is a blend, believe it or not, of Zinfandels and with a little bit of Petit Syrah.
Oh, wow.
Petit Syrah, if you're not familiar with it, is a very big red varietal.
Yeah.
Very thick-skinned, high tannins, big structure. But in a rosé setting like we have here, you would never know that it was the same grape. And so we're able to really expose that particular grape in here entirely, basically show you a whole different face to that particular grape. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
What I love about this wine is you get beautiful raspberry, almost like grapefruit notes in it. It's very bright. I always describe wines as they can be very linear on your palate.
Okay.
Where the taste kind of cuts right through, where you're tasting, you swallow, and it kind of goes through. I can still taste that wine, but it's kind of this way. Okay. Sometimes you'll taste a wine, and we'll get to that with a Tempranillo, where I feel like it has broader shoulders on it.
More mouthfilling?
More mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It'll grow, and as you swallow, it feels like on your palate it just kind of opens up and just really kind of grows those shoulders to give you more structure and more things going on. This is really a summer wine. Today we're out in the gardens, as beautiful as they are.
Fabulous.
It's in the 80s. I wish there was a little hint of breeze.
A little more breeze.
Yeah. But I could see sitting down, having a conversation with the cheese that we're about to experience.
One of my favorites,
and
too.
just really kind of have a beautiful afternoon, right?
Sounds great.
So what are your thoughts on what you think really go well with this particular wine?
So as we talked earlier, cheeses fall into cheese families. And one of the cheeses that are families that works very well with the wines that have the minerality, the high acidity, what have you, that can go from Sauvignon Blanc all the way through to even some of the darker or heavier rosés, is going to be a goat cheese. And one of my favorites, you're going to go ahead and sample the big round one there in the front. If you want, shall we turn that around, or is it a little easier? There you go. That's close enough. Please do. We're going to cut a beautiful wedge out of this cheese. This is called Boucherandin. This is the log that it comes in, and it's a cheese that has a wonderful, soft, bloomy rind on the outside. The cheese itself, as you can see on the piece that you have in front of you, actually has 3 layers. You have the rind itself. This is the anatomy of the cheese. The rind itself, and then you see this lovely little gooey line on the inside, and then the clear white chalkiness in the middle. So rind, cream line, and paste. Those are the 3 parts of a cheese.
And as I cut through that, you could actually feel those textures different in it.
The longer this cheese ages, the bigger the cream line will get. You don't want this cheese to have more than about an inch of cream line, because then the rind will start to deteriorate. So we want those 3 levels.
Okay.
This should have a nice mushroomy texture. This should be a bit gooey on the palate, and this should be chalky.
So if you were to buy this and bring it home, how long do you think you could, how do you treat cheeses? How long do you think you could have this?
We would give you a slice of cheese maybe an inch wide, which would probably be enough for, in my house, 2 people, 3 or 4 in someone else's house. Please have a taste of it. I would love for you to try all 3 layers.
Okay.
What's beautiful
Should I
about
taste
this,
them separately?
You can if you'd like. The way I do this is I will sample the wine first. I'll sample my cheese second, make sure it fills my mouth. Mush it around really well so your whole palate gets a bit of the cheese, and then sample the 2 together. What's lovely about this cheese is that this chalky part is a little saltier, this is soft and creamy, and this gives you mushroom texture like a wonderful fresh mushroom.
Absolutely.
So this cheese is made in the Loire Valley in France, where 80% of all the goat's milk cheeses is made of all of France's cheese. Isn't that lovely? You're going to need a bigger piece.
So as I started, the cheese was fantastic, and as the rind comes into it, totally changes the profile of
different levels of flavor. What's really fun about having cheeses like this, and I'll talk about one that's not on our plate today as you're enjoying that, most people have heard about Jarlsberg.
Yeah.
Jarlsberg is a
common
Alpine style cheese. Not Swiss cheese. It's not made in Switzerland. There's no such thing as a Swiss cheese unless it's made in Switzerland. What we're looking at is an Alpine family. They all have similar characteristics. Stretchy, meltable, big eyes or holes in there. What's different about Jarlsberg versus, say, the cheese we have called Holy Cow? Jarlsberg, you chew, and no different than what you're talking about with the wine, you swallow it, you have that kind of linear flavor, you swallow, and it's pretty much done. It's done. You're ready for another bite. If you have a bite of the Holy Cow that we receive from Paso Robles, of all places, you bite, you chew, you swallow, and it keeps on giving. It keeps filling your mouth.
Isn't that fun?
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Different flavors come out even after the cheese is gone.
Interestingly enough, as I taste this cheese, tell me what you think, but it all of a sudden brought out almost some dried apricot notes in that rosé that I didn't really taste initially. It was much brighter and much fuller on my palate. And as that cheese, it's almost like an interaction with the wine and the protein. I know even if you have a wonderful barbecue, a steak, or some, anything on the grill, and you introduce that protein behind a wine that might be really big and fat, that protein always tends to kind of change and soften that profile.
Exactly.
So,
and that's how the larger cheeses, the ones with a higher fat, we talked about the triple creme. If you had the triple creme with this, it would change this again and bring that acidity, the minerality down, and you'd find something else in the wine.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's something that it's always fun. I think we get so busy in life, we don't always think about what we're eating, and you get into this mode of, well, it's good or it's not, but you don't really kind of stop and think about what it tastes like and how it's interacting, and
enjoy it
just
individually.
Slow down, and so I talk about that a lot in the tasting room when people are tasting, because they've had rosés or they've had Zinfandels or they've had whatever through their life, but have you really just stopped and tasted it? And and then all of a sudden they're like, well, how do I pick things out? And it's like it's almost a sense that you have to train, because you have untrained it to either you've just kind of dumbed it down to either like it or
bypassed it.
Just you kind of like it or you don't. It satisfies me or it doesn't, but this kind of really just stops you for a moment. Beautiful. I love that. Great.
Have a slice of this, and I want to talk about dumbing down flavors. Interestingly enough, go ahead and if you want to put it on your plate, you're welcome to. What's interesting is how often people come to my cheese counter and they're surprised at the price tag on the cheese. And one thing I do want to explain is that as you're eating factory-produced cheeses, say from Hilmar, it works great on your taco or your enchiladas or whatever. That's a different style of cooking, and that's fine. To get one of my beautiful big cheddars and use that on your tacos is really causing it a disservice, if you will. Interestingly enough, if you were to put that same taco cheese, well, I'll call it taco cheese, that nice cheddar on your charcuterie plate and sit with your glass of wine, you would probably eat 2 or 3 times the amount of cheese that you might usually do, because you're getting no satisfaction out of it. There's very little flavor. There's not a lot of interesting things about it. There's no texture. You lose track and you just keep eating it because you're not getting satisfied. Gentleman today came in and bought one of the 4 milk Goudas from me, and he says, I only need a small piece. This will last me for about 10 days. I said, really? How do you serve this? He says, I just chunk it off and enjoy it. But after 2 chunks, I don't want more than that. It's so full. I get such a big flavor out of it. So essentially, the $10 piece of cheese versus the $12 you buy that great big hunk at the grocery store, what you're getting is something that's a completely different animal.
Sure.
It's just more interesting that way.
It's artisanal. It's very much like wines.
You're
right?
getting the love that's made in it. You really have that awesome stuff.
Well, and with wines, we have very large producers that produce millions and millions of cases of wine annually.
Correct.
And they satisfy a need with consumers at one point. When you get to stuff like this is more of, with our wines, these are small lot, handcrafted, very much like the cheeses that we have today, which then all of a sudden provide you with an entirely different flavor profile.
Right.
They're not, I know when I buy a package of cheese for my tacos, it sometimes doesn't really matter what brand it is necessarily, because they all kind of taste the same. But when you get into this stuff, all of a sudden you're exposed to brand new flavors and things that you've never experienced before, very much like these small lot handcrafted wines that we're producing here. And so there's a lot of, that's why I love talking cheese and wine, because there's so many parallels to what they're doing to what we're doing. So what do we have?
This is a regular Manchego, and I say regular in such
one of my favorites also.
Manchego. So in Spain, Manchego is used very much as we use cheddar in our households. Every cheese drawer has it in there, every household. Manchego is specifically ruled by Spanish law. It has to be 100% La Mancha sheep milk, not even a different breed of sheep, La Mancha only, made in La Mancha, Spain, yada yada. Whole long list of things that you have to do to be able to name your cheese Manchego. Interestingly enough, the youngest Manchegos, a month or 2 months old, those are kept in Spain. They don't come here. Those are used just for tacos. That just those quick, simple things that you're going to have at home. They really don't use them even in restaurants. This is a 6-month-old Manchego. And what's fun about this, it's made out of sheep's milk. And I want you to notice in the light, you see the oily bits on the top? You see the oily beads? That's the lanolin coming up out of the sheep's milk.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Lanolin is a component of sheep milk that will bead up on the top during the heat. So this is 100% sheep's milk. It's got a wonderful flavor. It's not over the top complex because it's only 6 months old. It tastes awesome.
Oh, the flavor's amazing.
But as you age the cheese, the texture will change, the color will change. This is fairly ivory. An older Manchego will be more on the yellower tones or darker tan, peachy blush tones. It'll have crunchy crystals in them.
Yes.
And the little crunchy crystals come about because the amino acids will change at about 8 or 9 months old into something called tyrosine or tyrosine, a different form of amino acid. So this is a lovely young one, great for tapa. Enjoy it by the poolside with your wine. Put a little jamon serrano out there. I'm ready.
It has an amazing texture.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where it's almost like an arm bender. You have a piece, it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta have another
bite.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love, they just have, they lean towards really nice Parmesans to me as just a novice cheese
Especially
guy.
as they get older.
Yeah, the flavor I think there's similar characteristics to it, but just to sit down and have this on its own is...
No. What I find interesting is it brings out a totally different fruit flavor in the rosé than the goat cheese did. What
are you getting out of it? What do you think?
Mine's, Let me try this one more time. It just seemed a sweeter fruit flavor than the goat cheese did. I'm actually getting more strawberry.
It does kind of pull you back
that direction,
doesn't it?
Which would be lovely with this cheese. Fresh strawberries and this one.
Why don't we just call this good and we'll go sit down and enjoy the rest of
Toodles.
this? So, yeah.
We're good.
Well, we're not quite done
not
yet.
done yet. You baited me here with the Tempranillo, so.
Well, those are two beautiful examples of what you can do with our dry rosé, Harney Lane 2019. I could, you would be the star of any dinner party if you brought those two.
Bring those cheeses, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, good stuff.
Beautiful. Well, why don't we slide forward and see what's going on in Spain with some Tempranillo?
Sounds good. Let me get in my glass.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So, Tempranillo is one of these really amazing varieties for us. This is something that I started growing nearly 20 years ago. There was a winemaker in town that also had a winery over in the Yountville area, on the North Coast, that really kind of fell in love with Lodi and its Mediterranean climate and the soils that we have here, which are strikingly different from what they have over in that particular area. And Tempranillo was one of those things that he thought would do very well in this region. And so I had a friend of ours that planted a few acres for him just to see how it would do, and we found that it did very well. And over the years we had taken the vineyard over, and so I got to experience the growing side of Tempranillo, which is strikingly different from any other variety that we grow here. This is one of those varieties I mentioned earlier that is not planted very heavily in the area. There's less than 1,000 acres in California. Awesome. But over in Spain, over in Spain, it's one of those kind of main staple varietals. It, I would say, is planted as widely as what we have as far as Cabernet goes in California.
Oh, I get it.
So it's kind of one of their main varietals that they actually grow there. What I love about this particular wine is it has an amazing nose. It's kind of different from what we typically would find in California. It has this wonderful earthy mid-palate that I always get out of the Tempranillos that we grow. And this is really one of those food wines. It really pairs with a lot of different things. Loves proteins of all sorts, especially cheeses. Get that nice smoke off of the French and American oak that this is on. Both of these lots too, going back to when I talk about small lot, what is small lot production? There's less than 500 cases of the dry rosé that we produce annually. This 2017 Tempranillo, we made a whopping 710 cases.
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about artisanal production,
right,
these are things like our wines that go into small batch fermentations. And so we're not taking 10 or 15 or 20 or 2,000 tons of fruit and going into one tank and fermenting them. We actually go into these small vessels with about 1,000 pounds each, where we have all these small individual fermentations happening that are happening in slightly different variations. A lot of it's wildly fermented, which means that we're not introducing a commercially viable yeast. Where yeast cells reside everywhere, on surfaces everywhere around the world.
Cheese occasionally is made that way with just what happens to be hanging out on the walls and the ceiling and your hands, whatever.
We have the same thing in the vineyards. You have all these indigenous yeast cells that are naturally occurring out there, and so a lot of times with a lot of our wines, we'll allow those to just kind of do the fermentation for us and see what the flora of the vineyard is. And so. Fun stuff. These are aged for about 2 years on, I think I said French and American, but it's really Hungarian and American oak. Part of our spice rack. With cheeses and the different things that they're doing to create the different flavor profiles, we have our spice rack also with our wine production. And so it's the yeasts that we use that can provoke different flavor profiles coming from that fruit. It's the barrel selections that have different flavor profiles. Even how they're toasted. We can have them not toasted, lightly toasted, heavy toasted.
Oh, that's awesome.
They can be fire toasted. They can fire bent, which is part of the toasting process. They can be water bent, which we don't really use.
That's the decision of the winemaker, what you want to pull out in each batch.
Right.
Yeah.
So very much like making spaghetti sauce, right? I always say that's my analogy.
Yeah.
You know, we all make spaghetti sauce, right? And I could give 10 different people tomatoes from my garden that are all the same and say, go home and make your own spaghetti sauce and bring it back. And you would have 10 entirely different variations of the same thing from the raw product.
That's the chef side of me.
That's the chef side, And so that happens on the winemaking side, that happens on the cheese making side, that happens in the kitchen, right? Yeah. So, cheeses, what do we got going on with this?
Some interesting things. One of my favorite cheeses of all time, and so I have a hard time selling cheese that people call stinky.
Those are my favorite, though.
Stinky cheese. They don't want the ones that smell like feet, shockingly enough. So, the cheese you're going to taste now is this one right here, and you'll notice it has paper on the outside. Go ahead and take a nice slice out of it.
Okay. Just slice across it?
Yeah, sure. Straight across is great, right through the paper. This is an Italian mountain cheese.
Oh my gosh, that feels just creamy and delicious.
So this is called taleggio.
Taleggio. Ooh.
So this lovely bit that's been sitting here with a little nice sunshine, look at how glorious that is. Thank goodness we have it wrapped in its saran wrap to keep it in its skin. Interestingly enough, and you notice here, I have paper on the exterior. It's made specifically this way to leave the paper on it for the moment. When they make this cheese, it comes out as a 6-pound, what we call a pillow. And the 6-pound pillow is aged by the affineur.
When you say pillow, it just looks like a pillow.
It looks like a pillow.
Yeah, but just the texture.
So the affineur, that's the person. Now there's 3 people in the cheese making process. You have your dairyman, making sure that our milk is healthy and good for us. Doesn't have anything icky in there. Good dairy. It comes to the cheesemaker. The cheesemaker inoculates the vats, brings it from liquid to solid, pours the curds, what we have left, into the molds, and sends it off to the affineur. Affinage is what the person does, like with your barrel room master, probably, checking to be sure that the barrels are fine. Sure. Don't top them off. Do whatever it is you need to do to make sure that your wine is aging properly. Same thing with the cheese. This is a cheese that becomes a stinky cheese. Without the paper on it, you have this lovely pillow, and it's hard because until it ages a bit, it won't start to soften up. They actually wash the rind. So there's a family of cheese called washed rinds, stinky cheese. The reality of this cheese, and any of the ones that fit in that family, are washed with salt water or wine or cider or beer. All of those things will bring particular bacteria to the rind of the cheese.
Beautiful.
What it does, though, is it allows Brevibacterium linens, B. linens for short, to grow. B. linens allows the cheese to turn orange. If you look at the rind past the paper, it's this bright,
I can see it,
orangey, pinky color. The orange pink indicates that it has B. linens present. You don't even have to look at the cheese, smell the cheese, taste the cheese. You'll know that that orange will give you a stinky cheese.
It sounds a little bit different than what we're normally buying in the grocery store.
It's a lot different. Interestingly enough, B. linens will bring that smell, that aroma that people at Limburger cheese. It's schmear ripened with the same style of, and you get it to here, and your nose says, oh, I don't want that in my mouth. But if you can get past here and taste your cheese, the cheese actually, because of that ripening surface, will taste like fruity or brothy or oniony, depending on what product, what bacteria has actually ripened this. So go ahead and have a taste.
Can I do it?
You can.
Okay.
Not everybody likes to eat the rind. It's a little sticky, stinky, but if you like it, have at it. Otherwise, trim it at your plate. I love the creamy softness. It's a cow's milk cheese.
That is insane.
It is, and where's the bread when you need it? You smear that right on. Oh man. This, I'll make a pot of polenta and take the rind off of this and put that in my polenta to finish, and a handful of fresh herbs. Who needs anything else? Bring on the wine and eat polenta for dinner.
That has this earthy characteristic that really complements
like
earthy
that?
characteristic.
It's one of my favorites.
You have to, come on.
I'll get in there. I'll get in there. You poured me wine, I'm going to drink it. That lovely cheese is one of my absolute favorites. It goes great with all different kinds of foods. It's wonderful in any type of a melted preparation. Awesome with pasta and polenta and rice. And
so you said with this one, with what that was rubbed with, what flavors could you get from it?
What the wash will do is attract the correct bacteria that will change the craft of the cheese maker, so that your cheeses in a wash rind family will have either fruity flavors or they have what they call brothy or oniony.
So
you'll
that's
get
what
that
I'm getting.
big beefy flavor out of it.
Is that what I should be tasting off of this one?
You should, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it goes, this is great with meat. You got it going, right?
Perfect.
Oh, I love it. Oh, man. So good. Do we have to go on to more cheese? Yes, we do.
All right.
Next cheese is going to be this one right here. Please have at it.
Okay.
This is also a Manchego style.
I was wondering because they look very similar.
Yes, they do. When you look at these two cheeses in my shop, and I have both pieces here, though the camera probably can't identify the sides. Both of them, this is true Manchego, and this one is a Manchego style.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, can you see the basket weave on the outside?
Yeah, that's what I was noticing.
The reason for the basket weave presentation is that in the olden days, the Spanish would have had esparto grass make the baskets that our curds would have gone in.
Beautiful.
And now our women know espadrille shoes have the esparto grass wedge heels. Well, they have used now plastic molds with that cross hatching on it to indicate you've got a Manchego. I say this is Manchego style.
Okay.
Because by law, Manchego has to be 100% sheep. This is 50% cow.
Okay.
And the other 50% is goat and sheep. We just don't know the ratio.
So this looks like, because this looks like the lanolin.
Lanolin's coming up because sheep's part of it.
Okay.
But you might also notice it has the little white crystals. Can you see the little white crystals at the base? This is a 16-month-old Manchego. Now,
they actually give you a little crunch in there.
They give you the crunchies. A lot of people think it's salt. When indeed salt goes into the vat, it will melt into the milk. The tyrosine or tyrosine will be what forms as little crunchy crystals at about 8 or 9 months old. What's fun about this cheese, though, is that as a cheesemonger, when we receive the cheese in the shop, I can't wait to be the first one to open up the whole wheel. When you pull the wire through that wheel and open it up, the aroma comes right up into your face.
Oh my gosh.
If it smells like young Parmigiano, we have more sheep's milk in this preparation than goat.
Oh, so you can actually tell.
If it smells a little of the barnyard, there's more goat than sheep. Now, why would they have different ratios? Because the animals go off lactation.
Okay.
So how much milk is available at any given time when you're making this cheese to be made the same style as Manchego, same recipe, same aging, the whole bit, but because we've made the milk coupage different, we cannot by law call it Manchego. Isn't that fun?
It's fascinating.
Phenomenal.
And you have so many generations of all of this going on over there in Europe, which is so different than what we have in the U.S. Right. And it's really fun to see how they've
these are the traditional.
The traditional stuff, right? So it's really interesting with this cheese because the wine, I think, really stays the same, but it takes that cheese and just explodes it.
The flavors.
It took the cheese and it magnified the flavor profile.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, amazing stuff.
With that said, we've tried 2 cheeses with each of our wines. If you'd like to try the red with 2 other cheeses or go and try it with the cheeses we had with our white, you'll get a chance to see that as a consumer, you do not need to be an expert winemaker or an expert cheesemonger to pair up your wines and your cheeses. Part of the lesson in having wine and cheese together is what your palate enjoys together. We can give you lovely generalizations, find things that pair fairly well, enjoy them, but you can step outside of that box and really enjoy something separately or differently. How does it work?
Yeah, and I think that's what we say here all the time. People walk in and for some reason wine, I kind of bring it back to the fact that it really is just something simple. It's a beverage,
right?
But we've wrapped all these different things around it. And it's really about experimentation and, like you said, seeing what you like, but go out and buy something that you've never had before.
Right.
Or venture out and find a small artisanal winery that maybe is producing something unusual that you want to seek out. But and then really sit back. It's so fun to grab something like this or grab some wines. I love blind tastings. I love pairings.
Well, this is where playing with your food comes in. Do it. Don't be a kid.
Really?
Don't throw it on the floor. Play with your food.
don't just either say it's good or not, but really kind of enjoy it. And this becomes like one of those really social experiments,
It is.
right? And you'll have at a group of 10 different ideas
Opinions,
on
right.
what they like. But that's what's fun about all this
When
stuff.
we're at the cheese counter and people say, "Oh my gosh, I'd never had something like that before. Who knew this would be?" You know, I try to bring it down to this level, and I don't want to make it too simplistic, but cheese and wine are basically peasant food. It's how they preserved their crop to feed themselves through the winter.
Yep, absolutely.
It's what you did to make sure what you grew made it to your table. So we're not going to take the highbrow end. I try not to, especially with our cheeses, because it's something that everyone should enjoy. They're wonderful, and expose your children to it. I've got a 3-year-old, comes with mommy and daddy, who all she wants is blue cheese. She loves her blue cheese and won't eat a cheddar. Will not touch it.
Our kids were the same way.
Yeah.
We they were very, very young, and we decided, we were young and didn't have a lot of money, but we bought a porterhouse.
Yes.
And like, oh, mom and dad are going to eat large. And the kids were there, and they got a taste of a really good piece of meat, and they never went back. And same with cheeses. My kids were the same way. It's, you introduce them to that stuff, but it's a lifelong adventure.
It is. And with the traditional cheeses of Europe, other places around the world, we're very young here in America. We've only got 400 or 500 years under us. Our cheesemakers now, however, are stepping way beyond the traditional methods or bounds. They're taking what we thought was the traditional Taleggio and they're mixing it up, doing things a little bit differently. And so no different than way back in the day, we're the rogues, we're the rebels, Americans are the rebels. And we're taking what our time-honored traditions, stepping a little bit outside the box. So one whole case of Cheese Central is devoted only to California cheese and what our California cheesemakers are doing. So it's been really fun to highlight that. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great time. I really wish we had a lot of people in front of us because
we'd have to share the cheese.
I know. But we're going to get back to that anyway. But this is something that you guys can actually do at home, and if you're local, I would highly recommend making a trek to Lodi, go downtown, visit Cheese Central. She's got some amazing stuff there, and it's always changing. You're evolving. You're finding new artisanal guys, and then it's a great time to visit you and come out here, grab a bottle of wine,
garden,
enjoy the gardens, and just have a wonderful day, right? So, plan on that. Thank you. Our wines, we can always visit harneylane.com and pick those up. We have great shipping deals. If you're not in the area, we can ship them out, no problem. We've got to figure out the cheese thing on getting that shipped and going to consumers.
We can do that. I do ship all over the country.
Good.
Traditionally, you just give us a call. I ship on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. We do it flat rate with a 2-day arrival. And so you're able to order cheese from me, but I do not have a menu online. Give me a call. We'll talk about what kind of cheese you like, and we'll send that on.
You do have a website, though, that they can get all the information?
Yeah.
What's your website?
CheeseCentralLodi.com.
Beautiful. And we can get it to them.
Absolutely.
So we can put this what we have today, if you contact Cindy.
Send it off to you.
Contact us. You guys can recreate this in your own space, right?
Yep.
Well, thanks so much. This has been fun. Fun with you guys. I can't wait to do this together. In the meantime,
thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. This has been a great time. Enjoy.
We will.